Earth isn't the only place for us. We're going to continue to take mankind beyond Earth to Mars, leave the solar system, and continue to spread humankind across the galaxy.
Since the earliest of civilizations, we have made much progress. But that progress came with a cost. Our world has changed.
Systems checked, ready to prime.
And despite our advances in both science and technology, we can no longer deny what is clear. Our time on Earth is ending.
Separação completa. Ir para decolagem.
So we turn our gaze upward to the stars and embark on the greatest journey in human history. A journey into the unknown, to discover a new world, a new home, a new beginning for mankind.
The world around us is dying. Many are aware of it, but they don't want to confront it for fear of being labelled a killjoy, an eco-freak, or an apocalyptic fundamentalist. Man-made systems are crumbling all around us, and the men and women who have annual meetings to prevent global calamity cannot resolve anything.
That if there aren't bees, there's something wrong.
Even nature is dying. The bumblebee that man is dependent upon to pollinate the plants is dying out at an alarming rate in their thousands, especially in Europe and the United States, that have forced many businesses to shut down. Sadly, man thinks that science can resolve all of Earth's problems, and they have this rather ridiculous notion that by tampering with nature, or by attempting to create new species, society will be saved, or having this wild notion that flying to another planet to relocate can prevent man's deeper fall into decay. The Bible offers something a lot better. It tells us how the world started and how it will end. Not only does it offer man the option of being in eternity, it forewarns us in advance that the earth will be destroyed eventually by fire, and it gives clear warnings of two earthly systems that will temporarily rule over man. And as the prophetic clock winds down to the closing stages of Earth history, every human being will have to make a choice to decide their eternal destiny.
The book of Revelation is Jesus Christ revealing himself to his servants through prophecy, so not one of us has an excuse. The very word revelation means to reveal. It comes from a Greek word apocalypsis, which means to reveal. And Christ has always forewarned his people of things to come, so that not one of us can say, I did not know. In our last study, we saw what would be the effects of those who do not accept the mark, the image, or the number of his name. But in this study, we're going to actually attempt to see what is the mark, the image, and the number of his name. But first, Christ has given us an identifying number so we can see what system we're going to be up against before we stand on the sea of glass.
Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 613. threescore, a score is the Anglo-Saxon word for 20, and 6. How do you acquire wisdom and understanding according to the biblical criteria? The patriarch Job said, "And unto man he said, Behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding." In order to understand the number 666, we need to go back into the past. From the very earliest times, the number 6 was dedicated to the deification of both man, who put himself higher than God, and the serpent, who, next to the sun, was the most revered and worshipped deity in the pre-Christian occult world, probably because both man and the serpent were created on the 6th day. It doesn't matter what part of the world you go to, both man and the serpent were worshipped. Where in places like Egypt, the pharaohs wore the cobra or serpent crown. Even lightning was depicted as the serpent coming out the clouds. And in many cultures in the East, especially in India, the serpent is still revered and worshipped till this very day. Even the number 6 is depicted as a coiled serpent, with similar pronunciations of the hissing serpent noise throughout cultures all over the world. And on the back of the cobra's head, you can see the letter V. Among the Babylonians and later the Jews, V or Vav is the 6th letter of the Hebrew Chaldee alphabet that can be double-checked by reading the 119th Psalm that is divided into the 22 consonants of the Hebrew alphabet. The late Dr. Sir Ernest Alfred Wallace Budge, an English Egyptologist and Orientalist who worked for the British Museum, said that numbers were sacred in the ancient world, and that from the early Babylonians to the Pythagoreans, numbers held a very vital place. The Platonic Greek philosopher and historian Plutarch said that the number 36 was the most sacred number of the Egyptian mysteries. He himself was also initiated into the mysteries. This astrological chart, no longer on display at the Pergamon Museum in Germany, was once worn by the pagan high priests in Pergamon in Asia Minor, which is modern-day Turkey, and it has the numbers from 1 to 36 engraved on each square. Why was 36 sacred to the ancients? The Babylonians divided each of the 12 houses in the zodiac into 3 rooms, making 36 in all, and to swear by the number 36 was to swear by every god in the heavens above. And the summary number of the numbers 1 to 36 is 666, this number called the grand number of the sun. In the Hebrew, Chaldean, Latin, Greek and Arabic languages, each has a numerical value for the letters of their alphabet. The Hebrew Chaldee word for the sun or solar heat is solath, and with its Hebrew Chaldee spelling with the numerical value of each letter, it adds up to 666. The original Roman numerals I, V, X, L, C and D, when added up together, you get the numerical value of 666. The 2nd century church father Irenaeus, who was a disciple of Polycarp, who was also the disciple of John the Revelator, was the first to assign the word Latinos, the Latin-speaking man, to 666. When written in Greek letters with its numerical values, it adds up to 666. Thomas Goodwin, who was a Puritan that lived from 1600 to 1680, that was the president of Magdalen College in Oxford, in his works revived this position in the 17th century, where he applied it to the Pope and the papacy. Robert Fleming, a Scottish minister and prophetic scholar, in his works also applies 666 to the papacy, where he not only refers to Latinos, but Rometh, the Roman kingdom, where if you add up the Hebrew letters and their numerical value, it adds up to 666. In the 18th century, Thomas Newton, an English cleric, the Bishop of Bristol, a solid Bible scholar and author, seconds this in his works titled The Dissertations on the Prophecies. Now, Rometh is the Hebrew name for the Roman beast or Roman kingdom, and this word, as well as the former word Latinos, contains the just and exact number of 666.
So we see that the 666 system is a system rooted in a system and the worship of man. And that system has been identified by all Protestant scholars as the papacy. But the United States of America is going to make the whole world worship and follow this system. For us to understand these things clearer, let us look at biblical symbolism and let us break down the hieroglyphic language of Bible prophecy. And in order to do that, we need to go to the best scholars who understood these things beforehand, so that we in this day and age can understand what systems we are up against, so we have no excuse.
In London's Westminster Abbey are the buried remains of some of the most famous individuals in British history. One of the most famous is a man who has been titled as the greatest mind in the modern world, the scientist and mathematician Sir Isaac Newton. He is famous for introducing the laws of motion and gravity. But in his private collection of papers, scholars unearthed that he spent more time studying Bible prophecy than science. And this is what he said. The revelation of Jesus Christ. The book is the unveiling which Jesus Christ gives, a revelation of which he is the author and the source. It contains not an arbitrary selection of events, but an orderly and continuous narrative in symbol, like the visions of Daniel, to be a divine help to the church. It is intended to nerve the Lord's warriors, to arm them for the battle, and to lead them to victory. Its noble purpose is to form the characters, guide the steps, maintain the faith, and inspire the courage of those who are to witness for him, and to pass under every species of torture, and through the flame unto glory and immortality, to imitate and to sustain the saints and martyrs who are to share its triumphs and to wear its crowns. It is a revelation, not a mystery, though in symbolic language. Such prophecies are simply history written beforehand, but in hieroglyphics or cipher, which conceal while revealing, and reveal while concealing, and which are gradually made plain as the time of the accomplishments draws near. To understand how to decipher the hieroglyphic language of prophecy, let us first look at how the Egyptian hieroglyphs were deciphered. The pictographic alphabet of Egypt the Western world has called hieroglyphs, which means sacred carving. The Egyptians called it the Medu Neter, which means the writing of the gods. After the reign of the Ptolemies, the writing and its meaning were lost into oblivion, and the Western world viewed it as a mystical language that cannot be understood. Giovanni Bolzani was an Italian Renaissance humanist who, in the 16th century, was the first to attempt to decipher the Egyptian language in a work published in 1556 titled Hieroglyphica. He was followed in the 16th century by a German Jesuit, Athanasius Kircher, who also tried to decipher the Egyptian hieroglyphs, where he thought that every character was an idea. His attempts are on display in a cabinet in the British Museum. But in another room in the British Museum is the most prized artifact in there. Enclosed in a glass case is a black basalt stone, 3 foot 9 inches long and 2 foot 4.5 inches wide. It is the famous Rosetta Stone, and there is always a huge crowd viewing it. There is a replica of it in another room, and what makes it unique is that this artifact was not only one of the keys that unlocked the secrets of the Egyptian culture, but the inscriptions that are written in 2 languages and 3 scripts, Greek at the bottom, hieratic in the middle, and hieroglyphics at the top, was the key to unlocking the Egyptian hieroglyphics that prior to that discovery was unknown. The first scholar that contributed to the deciphering of that stone was Thomas Young, an English physician who made one of the earliest contributions to the theory of light. Before he was 20 years old, he studied French, Italian, Latin, Greek, Hebrew, Syriac, Chaldee, Samaritan, Arabic, Persian, Turkish, and Ethiopic. And in an age of learning antiquities, this linguist laid the foundation of the science of Egyptology. His works of deciphering are also on display in the British Museum. He was succeeded by the French Egyptologist Jean-François Champollion, who, at the age of 18, he is said to have a fair knowledge of Hebrew, Syriac, and Chaldee. In 1824, he was appointed as director of the Egyptian Museum in the Louvre. Through his painstaking efforts, building upon Thomas Young's work, we can now understand the Egyptian hieroglyphs, where his research is also on display in the British Museum. Through patience and perseverance, these two linguists were able to unlock a language that was lost to man for almost 2,000 years. Bible prophecy was also lost to man for well over a millennia. But when the Reformation came, men like the French-trained humanist lawyer turned theologian John Calvin reintroduced people back to prophecy, especially the book of Daniel. Sir Isaac Newton gives us a clear understanding of prophetic symbolism and shows us how the book of Revelation cannot be understood without a knowledge of the hieroglyphic language of Daniel. The prediction of things to come relate to the state of the church in all ages, and amongst the old prophets, Daniel is most distinct in order of time and easiest to be understood, and therefore in those things which relate to the last times, he must be made the key to the rest. The Apocalypse of John is written in the same style and language with the prophecies of Daniel, and hath the same relation to them which they have to one another, so that all of them together make but one complete prophecy. In order to study prophecy carefully, we need a knowledge of time, history, chronology, and a thorough knowledge of the scriptures. Let us first look at time. In Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 and 15, we are told that both the sun and the moon did not appear as the result of a random explosion from nowhere, but as a guide to man so he can measure time throughout the year. And God said, "Let there be lights in the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years." A day is governed by the rising and setting of the sun, and at even when the sun did set. And very early in the morning, the first day of the week, they came unto the sepulchre at the rising of the sun. The very word month is from the word moon, the Earth's only natural satellite, that we use to govern our year alongside the sun. From these tablets in the British Museum, we have an understanding that the Sumero-Babylonian culture, the earliest civilization on Earth, used a 7-day week and had a lunar solar calendar of 12 months. This was also the same with the Hebrew calendar. F.C. Gilbert was a London-born Jew who was training to be a rabbi. He migrated to the United States and then he converted to Christianity. His works give us an understanding of the Hebrew calendar. According to Exodus chapter 12 verse 1 and 2, chapter 16 verse 1, chapter 19 verse 1, Jeremiah chapter 39 and verse 2, chapter 28 and verse 1, Haggai 1 verse 1, Leviticus chapter 23 verses 26 and 27, 1 Kings chapter 12 and verse 32, Zechariah chapter 7 and verse 1, Ezekiel chapter 24 and verse 1, Deuteronomy chapter 1 and verse 3, and Esther 9 verse 1 compared with Numbers 28 verse 14, 1 Kings 4 verse 7, and 1 Chronicles chapter 27 verses 1 to 15, the Bible teaches that there are 12 months in the year. So from the book of Genesis to the book of Revelation, the Bible reckons the period of 30 days to the month. Since there are 12 months to the year, the scripture days of a year therefore are 360. The Jewish people have so arranged their calendar that the 12th month, see Esther 9 verse 1, is periodically repeated. This repetition of Adar, the 12th month, is called Wee Adar, Adar over again. By this calendar arrangement, the solar and lunar months are harmonized. The 5th month in the Roman calendar, Quintilis, was changed to Julius or July in 44 BC, the year Julius Caesar died. Julius Caesar, whose rise and fall was prophesied in Daniel chapter 11, verses 17 to 19, introduced the Julian calendar that made every fourth year a leap year. It was revised in 1582 by Pope Gregory XIII, that was labelled the Gregorian calendar, and it was adopted in Catholic countries and eventually in Great Britain and her colonies, and eventually is now the world calendar which is used all over the world. So we have measured time, now let's align time with events. In a brilliant and well documented book titled Sacred Chronology, it teaches us how to measure dates and events and how to harmonize them. The Grecian era or Olympiads dates from July 776 BC, the date of the first Olympic Games, and an Olympiad was a cycle of 4 years. The Roman era that commenced with the building of Rome in 753 BC, where Cicero and Plutarch both record that a total eclipse of the sun happened in the third year of the sixth Olympiad in 754 to 3 BC. We are indebted to two historians for unraveling chronology and time. The first is a man who Latinized his name to Titus Flavius Josephus, the 1st century Roman Jewish scholar, and Claudius Ptolemy, the Greco-Roman Alexandrian mathematician who recorded the reigns of successive Chaldean, Persian, Grecian, Egyptian and Roman kings from BC 747 to AD 137, and the calculation of different lunar eclipses during their reign. He is the key link to understand the right dating in the book of Daniel. According to the prophet Jeremiah, we get the reigns of different kings. The word that came to Jeremiah concerning all the people of Judah in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, that was the first year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. So what is the first year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign? Humphrey Prideaux, Doctor of Divinity, was an English churchman and the Dean of Norwich. He wrote a 2-volume set titled The Old and New Testament connected with the Jews, and documented that the first year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign was 604 BC, using Ptolemy's canon. Throughout the British Museum are a number of tablets that are inscribed with King Nebuchadnezzar's name on it, in the wedge-shaped alphabet called cuneiform. A tablet that was once on display until 2013 actually records Nebuchadnezzar's invasion of Jerusalem as recorded by the prophets Jeremiah and Daniel. It was the skilled linguist Sir Henry Crenwick Rawlinson in the 19th century who has been labelled the father of Assyriology, who deciphered the Near Eastern cuneiform scripts of Babylonia, and the English archaeologist Sir Austin Henry Layard, a friend of Rawlinson, who transferred the artifact from Iraq, ancient Babylon, into the British Museum in the 19th century, gave us the understanding of chronological dates. In Layard's documented account of his excavations, he verifies what Humphrey Prideaux said. Nebuchadnezzar the Great, whose reign began, it may be inferred, from Ptolemy's canon, BC 604. But then he mentions his successor, the last king of Babylon. The description given by Herodotus of the state of the population of the city when under the dominion of the Persian kings is fully sufficient to explain the cause of her speedy decay and ultimate ruin. The account of the Greek historian fully tallies with the denunciations of the Hebrew prophets against the sin and wickedness of Babylon. The fingers of the man's hand wrote the words of condemnation of the Babylonian Empire upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. In an English newspaper article in The Guardian dated Tuesday, September 6, 2005, there is a satire picture called Belshazzar's Feast, with the writing on the wall on the top right hand corner, which is just what Layard wrote about. It quotes Daniel chapter 5 and verse 27 that reads, "Thou art weighed in the balances and found wanting," which is the prophetic overthrow of King Belshazzar. Who is Belshazzar, and what is his significance to prophetic hieroglyphic symbolism? In the British Museum is an artifact that silenced critics and skeptics in the 19th century. A small clay tablet in a Babylonian room in the British Museum has inscribed on it in cuneiform the name of the last king of the Neo-Babylonian Chaldean Empire, Belshazzar, whose name means Bel, protect the king, the very king who the writing of the wall was against. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. According to the book Sacred Chronology, it records that Archbishop James Ussher's chronology that is used in the margin of the King James Bible, dated to 555 BC, is not Belshazzar's first year, and it must be around 540 to 541 BC. But it was during Belshazzar's reign that a number of animals were introduced as symbols. The first was a lion, and this lion was unique for it had eagle's wings. The second animal was a bear that had 3 ribs in its mouth. This bear was succeeded by the last cunning hunter of all the wild cats, the leopard. The Bible explains what each of these animals or beasts symbolize. These great beasts, which are 4 kings which shall arise out of the earth. The 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon earth. Horns also represent kingdoms. If we can understand who the first kingdom symbolizes, then we can understand the successive symbols when we break down the hieroglyphic language of prophecy. The prophet Jeremiah says, Israel is a scattered sheep. The lions have driven him away. First the king of Assyria hath devoured him, and last this Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, hath broken his bones. So Babylon is symbolized as a lion, and the science of archaeology has verified what Daniel and his predecessors prophetically recorded, the rise and fall of world empires, where tourists now view the colossal remains of these worldly systems. But the real objective of the prophecies is to show which kingdom will succeed them all, an eternal kingdom that will smash to pieces all false earthly systems that suppress and brutalize the vulnerable. Listen to the words of the prophet Daniel. I saw in the night visions, and, behold, one like unto the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion, and glory, and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. You see, the object of all Bible prophecy, from the beginning to the end, is to lead us to Jesus as Redeemer, Restorer, and eventually the Destroyer of all sin. For he will not let evil continue and continue and continue. The Lord said, and he said unto them, These are the words which I spake unto you, while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled which were written in the law of Moses, and in the prophets, and in the Psalms concerning me. Jesus made it unequivocally clear to Pilate that his kingdom will be totally different from all earthly empires. Jesus answered, My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servant fight that I should not be delivered to the Jews? But now is my kingdom not from hence. And those who humbly by faith accept the ticket and invitation into eternity will be a part of the 5th and eternal kingdom in Daniel chapter 7. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. It was Jesus who authored both the books of Daniel and the Revelation, as Sir Isaac Newton said. And this can be verified when you study both prophetic books, for he is shown as, number 1, his loins girded with gold. Number 2, his face was as lightning or the sun. Number 3, his feet were like burnt or polished brass. His eyes were as fire. It was Jesus who laid the foundation of biblical symbolism by using something literal to explain something spiritual. The Lord said, "Now the parable is this: the seed, literal, is the word of God, spiritual." The foundation of this principle is laid down in the opening chapter of the book of Revelation, where the 7-branch candlestick in the earthly tabernacle now represents prophetically the churches. This can be confirmed by Sir Isaac Newton, who was very well versed in prophetic eschatology. The opening vision, Revelation chapter 1, shows a sacred chamber like that of the Jewish sanctuary, and with like furniture, and it is Christ, the head of the Christian church, in the character of the Jewish high priest, walking amidst the golden candlesticks. Again, our Lord says that 7 candlesticks are the 7 churches. Another warning from him against literalism in these visions. A candlestick is not to be understood literally. It represents a church, and so the symbol is to be interpreted elsewhere in the visions. What is the relevance of the Neo-Babylonian Chaldean Empire, symbolized as a lion, the Medo-Persian Empire with its Magian Zoroastrian priests, symbolized as a bear, and the Greek Empire and its vast array of pagan philosophers, symbolized as a leopard? All of these philosophies, ideas, rituals, customs, their apparels and culture have been all amalgamated into one system, the first of the 2 kingdoms in Revelation chapter 13. "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast, or kingdom, rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast, or kingdom, which I saw, was like unto a leopard, which is Greece, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, which is Medo-Persia, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion, which is Babylon. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority." If you were to ever pay a visit to the Vatican, you will see a statue of Pope Gregory XIII, the father of the Gregorian calendar, and underneath him is the dragon, the true god of the papacy. In the Vatican Museum, you will also see an image of a winged dragon. And there are also a number of paintings of the Emperor Constantine and his fraudulent deceptive conversion. And there is also a painting of him in battle. And above him you can actually see who is the real god. It is a winged dragon that Revelation chapter 12 verse 9 says is Satan. The prophetic scholar and missionary John Nevis Andrews identifies the papacy as the first kingdom that is an amalgamation of the previous ones. The beast with 10 horns described by Daniel is also seen by John to ascend out of the sea. In him were blended the marks of all the preceding beasts, the body of the leopard, the feet of the bear, and the mouth of the lion. Daniel 7 verses 4 to 6. The beast is evidently the papal form of the 4th empire, for it receives its power and seat from the dragon, Imperial Rome. The papacy, the first beast of the 2 kingdoms, will be the power that will lead the entire world into the very thing that the book of Revelation prepares you for, the second coming of Christ. To understand what will be the end result of the 2 kingdoms, and those who accept their mark, image, and number, we need to study a method called typology. According to Virtue's English Dictionary, typology is a doctrine of types, especially those of Scripture. To put it more simple, typology is just history repeating itself. In ancient Egypt, God poured plagues upon this heathen nation for their persecution of his people. These plagues were repeated over again upon those who accept the mark of the beast and those who have persecuted God's people. This time it will be worldwide. In Daniel chapter 1 in ancient Babylon, the Jewish captives Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael and Azariah feared God rather than man when they didn't eat the king's meat. In Daniel 2 it records the fall of Babylon, the head of gold. And in Daniel 3 a death decree was passed for those who did not bow and worship the image. All of these events will be repeated over again, and this time it will be worldwide. And it is imperative to study the past so that we can understand the present and the future. We are shown and identified who the two beasts or kingdoms are in Revelation chapter 13. Prophetically, the younger, the United States, will enforce the entire world to serve the older, the papacy. For a clearer clarification, if this is the first time watching this, click on the YouTube channel, Even at the Doors, and go to the Two Kingdoms Introduction 1 and Introduction 2, and you will get the historical background of these two systems.
So we have a clear understanding on how to break down biblical symbolism. And now this study is going to be broken down into 3 sections. I want you to have a clear understanding. So as I said, we are without excuse. God has forewarned us of things to come. None of us have any excuse. We may fail him, we may let him down sometimes, but still, God is still merciful to save us. And as we go through this study, we're going to go through 3 parts and see how we can clearly identify and understand these two kingdoms, the papacy and the United States, and the role they play in prophecy and world affairs. We cannot be lost. We cannot afford to be lost. So we're going to look at these systems so we can identify what we're going to be up against in these end times.
John Nevis Andrews was the first person to identify the United States as the second beast or kingdom in Revelation chapter 13 in 1851. And this is what he says about her role in the future. What is the mark of the beast? It is the mark of that beast to whom the image was made, the first beast. Revelation chapter 19 and verse 20, chapter 16 and verse 2. But it is enforced by the two-horned beast. Hence we understand it as an institution of the papacy enforced by Protestantism, or the United States. The beast and his image unite in this thing in opposition to the saints who are engaged in keeping the commandments of God. As shown in the study on the Ukraine, from the start of the Cold War, the papacy and the United States formed an unholy alliance to defeat and crush the influence of communist Russia that led to official diplomatic ties being established between them in 1984.
What did the Pope say to you in that meeting that inspired you?
We spent a bulk of our conversation around issues of poverty and inequality, themes that he's been talking about quite a bit, and obviously issues that I care about deeply.
When President Obama visited Pope Francis I, he was in awe of the biblical man of sin, the son of perdition, and repeatedly kept thanking the Pope for the invite. The secular media said there were major differences between US foreign policy and Vatican foreign policy. But the current US ambassador to the Holy See, the Jesuit-educated Roman Catholic Ken Francis Hackett, tells the Catholic media a different view.
The Obama administration and the Holy See interact positively and work together on many, many issues, religious freedom being one of them. There are issues where there's disagreement, but friends can disagree.
The papacy also has her own apostolic nuncio or ambassador to the United States, the former Secretary General of the Governorate of Vatican City State, Cardinal Maria Vigadno, and diplomacy will retain a close bond between the two kingdoms. Pope Francis I has pleaded to the churches in North America and the world to reconcile and come back to Rome. And the US evangelist Kenneth Copeland, as well as other evangelicals, have taken heed to the plea of the man of sin. Bishop T.D. Jakes is also playing a key role in the Vatican's reconciliation program titled the Ecumenical Movement. And one of the first to initiate this call was the late Chuck Colson, who went to the Vatican in the year 2000 and met the late Pope John Paul II, where he set up the Manhattan Declaration or Project somewhat years after that. Pat Robertson has endorsed the Patriot Act of 2001 that was co-engineered by the former Attorney General John Ashcroft. And before anything will be imposed on the world, the United States will be the first place on earth where liberties will be totally crushed. Let us see how.
This bill poses a serious threat for all who use the internet.
The freedoms our country had been built on would be suddenly deleted. I couldn't let that happen.
Understand, this bill is going to change the rules for the internet, not just in the United States, but around the world.
People, a lot of powerful people, who want to clamp down on the internet. We can't let that happen.
A co-founder of the social news and entertainment website Reddit has been found dead.
Aaron Swartz was an internet activist who died at the age of 26 in 2013, tirelessly campaigning for internet freedom in response to the many bills the US Congress wants to pass to crush internet freedom.
Ed has been a champion for middle-class families and small businesses. He stood up for common sense laws to keep our children safe from gun violence. I've got to have folks with me who care as passionately about these things as I do. That's who Ed Markey is. I need Ed Markey in the United States Senate.
I'm Ed Markey, and I approve this message.
U.S. Senator Ed Markey is a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. And with endorsement from President Obama, he is pushing for a bill where the National Telecommunications and Information Administration will update the government on what they deem as hate crimes online, like calling the Pope the Antichrist. We will see where this bill will lead to. United States citizens are now labeled as terrorists if they in any way defy the US government.
So these people who hold themselves out to be patriots are not. They're nothing more than domestic terrorists. And I think that we are a country that people should follow the law. And what went up in Mesquite is not very good. I repeat, what went on up there is domestic tourism. Okay, domestic terrorism, not tourism.
Cutting-edge technologies changing the way police fight crime.
What we essentially do is a live version of Google Earth, only with a full TiVo capability.
We basically kept it pretty hush-hush.
The power to track more people and data than ever before.
It's been worth its weight in gold.
The biggest concern is that anybody could end up being in that database.
Where to draw the line between security and privacy.
There is a trade-off.
A look at the state of surveillance.
Biometric surveillance is also ramping up.
Everything and everyone is connected. You can hack into anyone's life. Tap their phones, their music, their accounts. Identify criminals, disrupt communications, roadways, infiltrate private homes.
2 tickets to see James Rush tonight. My voice is my password.
Officer Rob Halverson of the Chula Vista Police Department is testing a technology that could change how police fight crime.
542 Delta.
He's on a call to verify the identity of a woman just arrested for possession of narcotics. He doesn't need to ask her name or check her ID. He just takes her picture.
Just look here, please.
His tablet uses facial recognition software to find the suspect's mugshot and criminal history.
You can lie about your name, you can lie about your date of birth, you can lie about your address, but tattoos, birthmarks, scars don't lie.
Police have access to more data than ever before, raising questions about how that information is used and stored. The tablet is part of a pilot program in San Diego County.
We asked ourselves, why haven't Facebook check-ins gone mainstream? Check-ins provide a powerful mechanism for businesses to deliver discounts to loyal customers. But few businesses, and even fewer customers, are taking advantage of this. So we set out to evolve the check-in process by creating a seamless method for checking in and getting deals. Face Deals is an automated check-in system using passive facial recognition to notify you of in-store deals that are customized just for you. Cameras have been developed to identify Face Deals participants in a matter of seconds. To get started, log into Facebook and grant Face Deals permission. Next, verify your likeness to complete your profile. When a face is confidently recognized, the deal is set into action. Face Deals dynamically optimizes your deal based on your Facebook-like history and delivers your customized deal to your mobile device, all while checking you in. It's that simple. Face Deals is currently beta testing with select Nashville businesses and will soon roll out in major cities worldwide. Developed by Red Pepper Lab.
When entering a Disney theme park, you not only have to use a card, but also fingerprint recognition that recognizes your thumbprint. In the video game called Medal of Honor, the predictive program of the US government highlights the Switchblade drone, a drone that looks over a region and targets civilians. This is what US soldiers use in Iraq and Afghanistan to hunt down alleged jihadist terrorists. But what is used on the foreign battlefield is now being used in the US homeland, where police departments are already using them, and by 2015, thousands will be deployed in the skies over its civilians. The tanks that were used in Iraq and Afghanistan are now being sold by the US government to police departments, where the police now look that they are ready for war, but against its own civilians. But it gets worse. Here is a photo of French and British snipers wearing a camouflage outfit called ghillie suits. And US snipers also wear this combat outfit in Battlefield. But in these two recruitment ads for Springdale Police Department in Arkansas and Portsmouth Police Department in the US, we see the police are being trained in domestic combat against its own civilians, where men in training are wearing, guess what? The ghillie suit. This is all a shadow of things to come. And for those who just think this is training, Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick, just after the Boston bombings in 2013, did what no other governor in modern history has ever done. He ordered 1 million people to stay home, and the greater Boston area shut down, where heavily armed officers did house-to-house raids looking for the Boston bomb suspects that shocked and frightened residents who were like under a form of martial law. Those outside of their house were not allowed to enter in, and those inside of their house were not allowed to go out. Another shadow of things to come. Though this will be the type of military takeover the US will do on its citizens, this section of the study will look at the character aspect of the prophecy.
Close your window, go back inside your house, answer the door.
What is the object of prophecy? Is it just for seeing things ahead of time? Its objective is to strengthen our faith and confidence in God and to change our lives. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it does not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. This is a prophecy about the second coming of Christ, but the following verse teaches the effects it should have on our hearts. And every man that hath this hope in him purifieth himself, even as he is pure. So prophecy is meant to purify you and change your character. And as we have shown that Jesus said in Luke chapter 24 and verse 44, that all prophecy is centered in him. If we are to be pure even as he is pure, then prophecy is meant to reveal Jesus in our lives. We have also a more sure word of prophecy, whereunto ye do well that ye take heed, as unto a light that shineth in a dark place, until the day dawn and the day star arise in your hearts. By taking heed to prophecy, the Bible describes it as a light that shineth in a dark place, where the day star will arise in our hearts. Who is the day star? I, Jesus, have sent mine angel to testify unto you these things in the churches. I am the root and offspring of David, and the bright and morning star. The object of the book of Revelation is not only to prepare God's people for the second coming of Christ, and to expose the earthly systems that will be an obstacle to Christ's faithful, but if the day star, who is Jesus Christ, is to shine in our hearts, the more we draw closer to him, the more we will become like him. He that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. The word overcometh or overcame comes from a Greek word, nikeo, and is constantly used in Revelation, and it means getting the victory or getting rid of anything that separates you from God. The scriptures mentions twice the only group of people who will resist the enforceful might of the two kingdoms. And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus, and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. And I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God. Coming back down to earth, the Bible is unequivocally clear and forewarns us that not only the right to buy or sell will be denied to those who don't accept the mark, image, the name, or the number of his name, but they will also be killed. As more and more of what we do becomes logged into a digital database, governments can create an intelligence or database of people's idiosyncrasies by monitoring radicals and activists to build a clear picture of those who they see as a threat in the future. Jesus forewarns us that we must count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, which, as we have observed, is a system rooted in humanistic self-worship. But if we embrace this false papal 666 system, then we will have the number of his name. What is interesting is that the image, the mark, the name, and the number are all used interchangeably. But how will we know which group we will fit into?
I've been a fan of him from when he posted his first video, and I'll be his fan till he posts his last video.
This one's for you.
When screaming fans show a high level of homage to the young Canadian singer Justin Bieber, while many may just call it teen fantasy, it is worship. footballers all across the world are also worshipped, with devoted fans spending thousands a year on seasonal tickets, t-shirts and all sorts of memorabilia. And many have equated this loyalty as a form of religion, where fans show their devotion to their favorite teams and players. Just prior to the second coming of Christ, the world will be divided into two camps and they will be distinguished by their worship. How does the Virtues English Dictionary define the word worship? The word worship is an Anglo-Saxon word that means to honor, the performance of devotional acts in honor of a deity, to reverence with supreme respect and veneration, to adore, to idolize. Now let us look at the scriptural definition of worship. In Romans chapter 6 and verse 16 it reads, "Know ye not, or do you not know, that to whom ye yield yourselves servants to obey, his servants ye are to whom ye obey, whether of sin unto death, or of obedience unto righteousness." From the words that are highlighted, whatever or whoever you obey, you become a servant to it or serve it. Let us make this study airtight and give some biblical definitions. And in the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah, began Ahab the son of Omri to reign over Israel. And Ahab the son of Omri reigned over Israel in Samaria 22 years. And it came to pass, as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, that he took to wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Zidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. So when King Ahab rejected God, he replaced the worship of God with the worship of the nature deity, the storm god Baal, and the scriptural language used is served. Let us give one more example of false worship. Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and reigned 55 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Hephzibah. For he built up again the high places which Hezekiah his father had destroyed, and he reared up altars for Baal, and made a grove, as did Ahab king of Israel, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served them. So King Manasseh made all of Israel to worship the planetary bodies in the heavens. And the language the Holy Scriptures use is served. The conflict that started in heaven and continues here on earth is all over worship. And from the Garden of Eden right up until when Jesus walked the earth, we can clearly see that Satan and his earthly representatives crave homage that only belongs to God. Again, the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, and sheweth him all the kingdoms of the world, and the glory of them, and saith unto him, All these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. Then said Jesus unto him, Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. So to worship is to serve. The conflict that existed between the first two brothers was over the issue of worship. Cain murdered his brother Abel, and this conflict will be repeated over again, this time on a worldwide scale, where God forewarns us of the most intense period of earth history that will be over worship, where the two kingdoms, like Cain, will kill those who don't accept their false system of worship. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, and kindred, and tongue, and people. The everlasting gospel is to go to every region of the planet, to every nation, and kindred, tongue, and people. And when this invitation to eternal life is given to every single person on the planet, the earth will come to an end at the second coming of Christ. And this gospel of the kingdom, or everlasting gospel, shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. Let us carefully see how the two people on earth will be distinguished by their worship. Saying with a loud voice, "Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come." And listen to the key word, "and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters." How do we, number one, fear God, and number two, give glory to him? We saw earlier in the study what Job chapter 28 verse 28 says what it is to fear God. But let us look at another text. When the angel spoke to the patriarch Abraham in the book of Genesis, when he was about to offer up his son Isaac, it reads, "And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him, for now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me." But what does it mean he feared God? "And in thy seed," or descendants, "shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice." So to fear God means to obey his voice and his word through choice. How do we give glory to him? "Whether therefore you eat or drink or whatsoever you do, do all to the glory of God." If we are really serious about God, we have to get to a stage where every single thing that we do, how we treat people, how we dress, how we walk, even our diet, should be to the glory of God. The last part reads, "And worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters." This is a call to the world that only a few will take heed to recognize God as the only absolute supreme creator. But what did God put into place as a memorial so that his creation does not forget their creator? "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made," and listen to the language of Revelation chapter 14 and verse 7, "heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it." Hallowed means blessed. God was restoring to Moses and the children of Israel an institution he put into place at the beginning of time so that no one will fall into the trap of nature worship called macroevolution, or the unscientific guesswork of the Big Bang Theory. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. The word rested comes from the Hebrew word Shabbath, or the Sabbath, and God's last plea to his creation is to come back to their creator. The second group of people that will make up the majority of the inhabitants of the earth will reject Christ and accept a false form of worship. "And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him," the Pope, "whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world." The Holy Scriptures continues. "And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man," and listen to the key word again, "worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. So just before the second coming of Christ, the gospel will be preached to every single person on the planet, where each person will decide their destiny. Those who worship God by fearing him, giving glory to him and recognizing him as creator by keeping his seventh-day Sabbath, and those who worship the papal beast and its false 666 system by accepting her mark, image and number. The emphasis of this prophecy is, will you be obedient to God, or will you be obedient to Satan and his earthly system? While many like to focus on the beast, very few are aware that the conflict is all over character. Listen to the Holy Scriptures. And the smoke of their torment ascended up forever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever received the mark of his name. The highlighted word is name, that is from a Greek word onoma, that means character, that is also found at the beginning of the chapter. And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Sion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads. So what will differentiate those on the earth will not be only the type of worship they have, but those who have either the name or the character of the beast, or those who have the character of our Heavenly Father. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. According to the biblical definition, what is a saint?
The eyes of the world are focused here on St. Peter's Square today for an event the likes of which we have never seen. 2 popes will be recognized as saints today, and as if that weren't enough, 2 living popes will celebrate this historic canonization mass. I'm Raymond Arroyo, and we are delighted to bring you this live EWTN News coverage of the mass and canonizations of Pope John Paul II and John the 23rd.
Canonization is ancestor worship. It is not biblical. It can be traced to an ancient pagan custom from pagan Rome called apotheosis. Apotheosis is the placing or ranking of person among deities. The biblical definition of a saint is different. Paul, an apostle of Jesus Christ by the will of God, and Timothy our brother, unto the church of God, which is at Corinth, with all the saints which are in all Achaia. And gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. So a saint is someone who is a member of the church of God that has made a covenant or holy agreement with God by sacrifice. Let us look at Revelation chapter 14 and verse 12 again and observe the words highlighted. These saints have patience, keep the commandments of God, and have the faith of Jesus. How do these saints acquire patience? Jesus, when describing the end times, says, "In your patience possess ye your souls." And how is that patience developed? Knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But as these saints will be the only people on earth who don't accept the mark, image, and number. They would have to go through some serious trials to get to that place where they are totally separate from the world. And not only so, but we glory in tribulations also, knowing that tribulations worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope. These saints also keep the 10 commandments of God. The 10 commandments that were written with God's own finger and given to Moses and the children of Israel, where they were placed in the Ark of the Covenant, covered by the angels, the seraphims. This was all a symbol of God's throne, and we will prove this. And thou shalt put into the ark the testimony which I shall give thee. What is a testimony? And he gave unto Moses, when he had made an end of communing with him upon Mount Sinai, 2 tables of testimony, tables of stone written with the finger of God. And what are these tables of testimony? And he, talking about Moses, was with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. He did neither eat bread nor drink water, and he wrote upon the tables the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. So the testimony, the 10 commandments, is to go into the ark. And where is the ark meant to go? And thou shalt hang up the veil under the taches, that thou mayest bring in thither within the veil the ark of the testimony. And the veil shall divide unto you between the holy place and the most holy. And thou shalt put the mercy seat upon the ark of the testimony in the most holy place. According to the book of Hebrews, the earthly tabernacle or temple or sanctuary and all its vessels was only a model of what was in heaven, as Revelation confirms. And the temple of God was opened in where? Heaven. And they were seen in his temple, listen to the language, the ark of his testament. And there were lightnings and voices and thunderings and an earthquake and great hail. Many Christians have scoffed and mocked at how can God have 10 commandments in heaven? Angels don't kill, steal, covet, or commit adultery. But they totally miss what the 10 commandments are for. Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So the whole basis of the law, the 10 commandments, is not thou shalt, but love. An Alabama judge, Roy Moore, erected the 10 commandments in his courthouse. Many secularists went up in arms and saw this as a violation of the Constitution. They saw it as a violation of the separation of church and state. They removed it. But this Baptist saw the importance of God's law. But not all ministers believe in the 10 commandments. And they are leading congregations astray to reject it, as Pastor Creflo Dollar is doing after misquoting the writings of Paul.
Are we dead to the law? Say out loud, I am not under the law. I'm dead to the law. I'm under grace. So if you live according to the law of Moses or the 10 commandments, you're again trying to live under something that God has not intended for you to live under. All right?
That contradicts the words of the Holy Scriptures. The Apostle Paul says, when talking about grace, what shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? He says in an earlier part of Romans, therefore we conclude that a man is justified by faith without the deeds of the law. So we are clear that we are justified or saved by faith. But if we are convicted of sin by the Holy Spirit, what do we measure or confess our sins over? Paul says, Do we then make void the law through faith? God forbid. Yea, we establish the law.
Some of y'all getting it, others you still asleep. Come on, Romans chapter 7. Verse 1 and 4. Ready? Read. Verse 1. Know you not, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law, how that the law hath dominion over a man as long as he liveth. Verse 4. Wherefore, my brethren, you also are become what? Dead to the law by the body of Christ, that you should be married to another, even to him who is raised from the dead, that we should bring forth fruit unto God. Say out loud, I am dead to the law.
Creflo Dollar fails to read the rest of the passage of scripture in Romans chapter 7, where it reads, What shall we say then? Is the law sin? God forbid. Nay, I had not known sin but by the law, for I had not known lust except the law had said, Thou shalt not covet. Wherefore the law is holy, and the commandment holy and just and good. If the law is holy, how do we become dead to something that is holy? Doesn't make sense. Paul continues, I thank God through Jesus Christ our Lord, so then with the mind I myself serve the law of God, but with the flesh the law of sin. Then Paul reiterates or repeats exactly what Jesus said. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. So God's law is, as we'll say again, is based upon love. And Creflo Dollar is preaching a false gospel. The faith of Jesus is having total dependence upon the word of God. So then faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. And total dependence on God the Father, as Jesus did, will distinguish these saints from all other professed believers. For whatsoever is born of God overcometh the world, and this is the victory that overcometh the world, even our faith. These saints are the only people on earth that will not accept the mark, the image, and the number of his name. Let us look at present truth. The United States of America, the Second Kingdom, is preparing everything in her arsenal for a global takeover. In a leaked government document that can be downloaded from the web in PDF format, it documents that there are detention internment camps already in place within the territory of the United States for its citizens. But her mission is global, and she has her command centers stationed all over the globe. Her 21st century wars should be an object lesson to anyone with an open mind that her track record is atrocious, and she produces a string of films to justify her operations in Afghanistan, totally ignoring the civilians' view of the war. This war in Afghanistan has increased the global narcotics trade, for 90% of the world's heroin comes from the Golden Crescent in Afghanistan that is controlled and trafficked by the CIA, the Afghan government, the Albanian mafia, and Turkish families and gangs that are situated in North London, through the Balkan route, where it leaves a trail and a massive increase of heroin addicts throughout the whole of Afghanistan and its neighboring countries in Asia, where the third highest number of heroin addicts on earth are in, guess where? Russia. And for those who think these are the words of a bitter, disgruntled British narrator, American confirms this herself through her gaming industry and its brutal, mercenary soldiers.
Democracy, democracy. Democracy is not what these people need. Hell, it's not even what they want. America's been trying to install democracies in nations for a century, and it hasn't worked one time. These countries don't have the most basic building blocks to support a democracy. Little things like we ought to be tolerant of those who disagree with us. We ought to be tolerant of those who worship a different God than us. That a journalist ought to be able to disagree with the president. And you think that you can just march into these countries based on some fundamentalist religious principles, drop a few bombs, topple a dictator, and start a democracy? Give me a break. People don't want freedom. They want boundaries, rules, protection from invaders and from themselves. People need a leader who can give them both the support and the constraints to keep chaos at bay. You give them that, and they'll follow. And that's where I come in.
Today, warfare is waged by new entities. They are known as private military corporations. They are loyal to no country, available to the highest bidder. And for the past 20 years, they have been steadily privatizing war.
I started Blackwater as a way to stay connected to the SEAL teams. Blackwater had the right culture, and we ran very hard when our customers called us. More than 100,000 missions, no one under our care ever killed or injured. We took over a remote base one time, and we did it with 25 guys. And we replaced 166 soldiers, and that's why the company grew very quickly.
The slaughter of civilians for sport, weapons smuggling, destruction of evidence, wholesale corruption, and finally murder. In our third story in the countdown, a full-fledged criminal enterprise executed by the military contractors known formerly as Blackwater, according to the sworn testimony of two of its employees. The Nation's Jeremy Scahill, who broke the story, joins us in a moment. The details come straight from two sworn affidavits filed late last night by persons whose identities have been sealed to protect their identity, men who have previously cooperated with federal prosecutors in the criminal inquiry into Blackwater. From John Doe No. 2, a former member of Blackwater's management team, quoting the affidavit, it appears that Mr. Eric Prince, Blackwater's founder, and his employees murdered or had murdered one or more persons who have provided information or who were planning to provide information to the federal authorities about the ongoing criminal conduct. On several occasions after my departure from Mr. Prince's employ, Mr. Prince's management has personally threatened me with death and violence. John Doe No. 2 also stating that Mr. Prince, pictured here, smuggled unlawful weapons into Iraq, including sawed-off semi-automatic machine guns with silencers and illegal hand grenades. And the affidavit also says that Prince, quote, views himself as a Christian crusader eliminating Muslims and the Islamic faith from the globe. To that end, Mr. Prince intentionally deployed to Iraq certain men who shared his vision of Christian supremacy. Many of these men used call signs based on the Knights of the Templar, the warriors who fought the Crusades. Mr. Prince operated his companies in a manner that encouraged and rewarded the destruction of Iraqi life. Going to Iraq to shoot and kill Iraqis was viewed as a sport or game. Strikingly similar allegations made in the affidavit of John Doe No. 1, a former U.S. Marine who worked for Blackwater in Iraq. He alleges that incidents of unjustified deadly force were initially videotaped and watched in a session called a hot wash. Blackwater, now known as Z Services, spelled XE, maintains that Mr. Prince and the company are innocent of any wrongdoing and performed their duties on behalf of their employer, the State Department. Joining me now, as promised, the contributor to The Nation magazine and author of Blackwater, The Rise of the World's Most Powerful Mercenary Army, Jeremy Scahill. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me back, Keith.
As horrific as all this sounds, it's just part of what you described in the piece today. Flesh it out for us.
Well, I mean, obviously, to hear the term murder and Blackwater in the same sentence is no great surprise, particularly to people
people who've been following the history of this company. It's been at the center of some of the worst violence in Iraq, killing civilians repeatedly. 5 of its men are going to be tried on manslaughter charges for the Nicer Square massacre in Baghdad in September of '07. Another one pled guilty. The Congress is investigating. The IRS is investigating. This is a scandal-plagued company. What is explosive about what's happened here, and you just went through some of the most explosive of these details, is that you have 2 former Blackwater officials. I have learned from sources that John Doe #2 was actually in Blackwater management and was privy to some of the inner workings of the company. Eric Prince, the owner of Blackwater, remains the sole owner of the company no matter that he stepped down as CEO and the founder of the company. He micromanages every aspect of Blackwater's operations, and that's been well known. On the Christian supremacist angle, let's remember that Eric Prince viewed Blackwater as a neo-crusader force and has from the beginning. This is a guy who comes from one of the powerhouse families of the radical religious right. His father was a major bankroller and gave the seed money to Gary Bauer to start the Family Research Council. James Dobson focused on the family. And then we have his forces deployed in Iraq as part of a war against a Muslim nation that George Bush characterized as a crusade. What we have here, Keith, is a confirmation from insiders at Blackwater that, in fact, Eric Prince did have a neo-crusader agenda and, most explosively, may have murdered or facilitated the murder of individuals that were intending to or did cooperate in the federal government's criminal investigation of Blackwater. This is deadly serious.
Jeremy Scahill is a leading U.S. investigative journalist who covers the dirty operation of America's secret armies and mercenary forces. He wrote a book called Blackwater, a deadly mercenary group who first made their public appearance after Hurricane Katrina. But he makes a startling expose. He shows that this mercenary army is flooded at its highest levels with papal knights. One of them, Joseph Smith, ranking a high position in the US government, as Jeremy Scahill records. Joseph Smith, like Eric Prince and other executives at Blackwater, is a Catholic and a Christian fundamentalist. On his official biography, Schmidt proudly listed his membership in the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. Some Blackwater executives even boast of their membership in the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, a Christian militia formed in the 11th century before the First Crusades with the mission of defending territories that the Crusaders had conquered from the Muslims. The order today boasts of being a sovereign subject of international law with its own constitution, passports, stamps, and public institutions, and diplomatic relations with 94 countries. The Knights of Malta current Grand Master is Friar Matthew Festing on the left, an Englishman who, in Catholic protocol, he is the church's highest ranking layman. Some of the most famous and least known knights are men like Prince Rupert zu Lowenstein in the center, the business manager of the Rolling Stones and Pink Floyd. With Pope Francis' militiamen steering this brutal mercenary force, we can only imagine what is in store for the future. She has also penetrated within the core of the US intelligence. The current director of the CIA is the Jesuit-educated Catholic John Owen Brennan, a man who is unrepentant about the collateral damage of his drone program. The late Avram Manhattan, a generation ago, in his 1967 book, Catholic Power Today, records how deeply Roman agents are integrated into the US government. The Catholic Church is the largest church in the United States of America. Politically, she is looming ever larger at the White House. She has a power in the Senate, a force in the Pentagon, an invisible secret agent of the FBI, and the most subtly intangible prime mover of the wheel within the wheel of the USA, the Central Intelligence Agency. His words can be verified by another giant in masking the papacy. English journalist David Yallop is renowned as the best investigative journalist on earth. He was doing some research on the Catholic priest Jose Maria Escriva and verifies what Manhattan said. Opus Dei is a Roman Catholic sect of international dimensions. It was founded by a Spanish priest, Monsignor Jose Maria Escriva, in 1928. In the United States, Escriva's followers can be found in both the CIA and FBI. The United States became aware of Opus Dei's immense presence in US intelligence when former FBI agent Robert Hanssen was caught selling classified US secrets to the Russian intelligence. He was caught in 2001, sentenced to life imprisonment, and it was discovered that he was not only a staunch Catholic and a member of Opus Dei, but that the FBI was flooded with Opus Dei agents at its highest levels, as David Yallop and Avram Manhattan confirmed. So Rome is everywhere. No matter how large the Russian military and its ally China is, the United States is not backing down. The United States has the world's leading defense contractors or arms companies, where they make huge profits from war. And the former 64th Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, is on record as saying, "What's the point of having this superb military if we can't use it?" The US spends as much on its military as the rest of the world combined. And the amount the US spends on war is a sin.
As of March 13th, 2013, private contractors represented 62% of the total forces in Afghanistan, setting a chilling new precedent in the nature of military occupation.
It amazes me how many people there are out there who are willing to get involved in this kind of thing. I can make a dozen phone calls, and within a month, we'll have 1,000 guys.
In the 10 years after 9/11, the US government has spent more than $3.3 trillion in private defense contracts. And all that money doesn't just buy the world's best soldiers. It buys access to the world's most advanced weapons. Feeding off of global instability, PMCs have thrived. In fact, the third largest company in the world is a private military corporation, and most people have never heard of them.
The 5th Fleet, U.S. Naval Forces Central Command, operates in the most strategically significant part of our planet. The global economy rests on the free movement of maritime traffic through 3 critical choke points that reside in this theater: the Suez Canal, the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, and the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. Navy has had a continual presence in the maritime of the Middle East, the Gulf, the Arabian Sea, the Red Sea, for more than 60 years. At the end of World War II, our national leaders, including Admiral Chester Nimitz, saw eminent value in this region and great partners in the people here. Our presence, our commitment has endured and will endure for many years to come.
Welcome to Face to Face with CENTCOM. As many of you know, CENTCOM is headquartered in Tampa, Florida. In this headquarters, many important activities are planned by the CENTCOM staff. These activities include planning of exercises, training exchanges, senior leader conferences, and other military-to-military engagements with our partners in the region. Events like these continue to be an important contribution to improving relationships and building stability throughout the Middle East. That's all for Face to Face with CENTCOM today. We encourage questions from our audience and invite you to send them to us by visiting our Facebook page and commenting.
The United States' biggest customer of our arms is the very region that the so-called war on terror is waging war against: the energy-rich Middle Eastern states and their despotic rulers. In 1990, after Saddam Hussein's partially US-equipped forces invaded Kuwait, George H.W. Bush successfully organized a coalition to expel him, which further enlarged the US military presence in the Persian Gulf, and with it the regional arms buildup. Although the cost of the first Gulf War in 1991 was mostly borne by Allied nations, the United States quickly thereafter sold the member states of the Gulf Cooperation Council, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates the advanced weaponry and basing facilities needed to support any follow-up rapid development. between 1990 and 1997 alone, noted one expert. The United States provided these countries with arms and ammunition worth over $42 billion, the largest and mostly costly transfer to any region in the world by any single supplier in recent history. And the sales continue to climb at the annual International Defense Exhibition and Conference, better known as IDEX, at the United Arab Emirates and its capital, Abu Dhabi, where the United States can parade and sell its arms to its Gulf allies. This region, where most of its states are US allies, where also US troops are stationed, already have undemocratic, torturous systems in place who will yield at the US commands where they worked with the United States on its extraordinary rendition program just after 9/11, where, as can be seen from this map, the CIA has a global network that includes Muslim states who assisted the United States in kidnapping allegedly Muslim terrorists, torturing them in either Egypt or Jordan, and then transferring them to Guantanamo Bay in Cuba or at one of its black sites with planes supplied by Boeing. The United States is also developing a huge presence in Africa via its Africa Command, and the front man to better get this underway is the US President Barack Hussein Obama, where the color of his skin blinds the people of Africa to his real operation, US corporate interests, to weaken China's influence. When the Obamas visited Africa, the scenario they gave to the world is that they were discovering their African roots, but that was a front. They were there to expand and recolonize Africa for its vast wealth of gold, diamonds, uranium, copper, and cobalt, just to name a few. Nigeria has asked for US help to recapture the kidnapped Nigerian schoolgirls, even though Amnesty International documented that the Nigerian government knew in advance about the Boko Haram raid on the school and did nothing. Africa is creating a biometric database where in countries like Somalia, it plans to have all of its citizens on a biometric database that will keep track on all of its citizens. And India, one of the largest populated countries on earth, they are also putting its 1.2 billion population on a database where we are now getting to a stage where the entire inhabitants on the earth will be monitored. But for those living in the old world, Europe, the former territory of the First Kingdom, the papacy, it is now being structured so that freedoms that were handed down to us from the Reformation will be eliminated. The European Court of Human Rights was set up after World War II so that there will not be a repeat of the Jewish Holocaust, where persecuted minorities can get a voice when they are being targeted by a government. But all that is about to change. The late US, and surprisingly, Jesuit priest Robert Drinan gives insight into what the future holds for religious minorities in Europe in his 2004 book, Can God and Caesar Coexist? He says, "The European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg does not seem to be offering much hope for religious minorities who suffer intolerance in Europe. In January 1996, a French National Commission on Cults blacklisted 172 organizations, among them Southern Baptists, Opus Dei, Seventh-day Adventists, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Scientologists. No precise definition of a cult was issued by a French government, but the listing clearly marginalized members of these organizations. Belgium has produced a blacklist of 189 organizations and created an agency to monitor them. Germany has also established a commission to monitor cults. But if there is one country in Europe we need to carefully analyze and look at in terms of the stepping up of surveillance and the build-up of targeting religious minorities, it is the UK.
Easter is the most important date in the Christian calendar and an incredibly special time for people across Britain and around the world. Easter is not just a time for Christians across our country to reflect, but a time for our whole country to reflect on what Christianity brings to Britain.
When the British Prime Minister David Cameron made that Easter message in 2014, calling Britain a Christian nation, secularists, humanists and atheists were enraged. These British Gentiles have no clue to their own history. John Wycliffe in the 14th century campaigned for religious and civil freedom and translated the Bible so the common man can read and think for himself without the authority of the church and state. This was the birth of the Protestant Reformation in Europe. His legacy continued 2 centuries later when William Tyndale pursued the same task, this time with the help of the printing press, where he fled to the continent and translated the Bible so the common man can read for himself. John Milton campaigned for the freedom of the press through his tract Areopagitica. But now Christians in the UK feel targeted. In London's Daily Telegraph, dated Wednesday, April the 23rd, 2014, it documents that Christians are fearful in the UK of speaking up about their faith so they don't get penalized. A preacher was locked up for 19 hours for giving his views on homosexuality when asked a question. He was denied food, but he was eventually awarded £13,000 in damages. Mr. John Banda was ordered to remove this scriptural text from around his neck in October 2006 and was booked for a criminal charge under Section 5 of the Public Order Act 1986, which is displaying a sign which is threatening, abusive or insulting. What has secular Britain offered us? It is trying to destroy free speech, which was given to Britain via the Reformation. It is trying to destroy the Magna Carta, which is trial by jury, also given to us via the Reformation. They are also discussing reintroducing the death penalty, which may be a shock to many. It is also one of the most surveillance regions on the planet. During 2011, there were some horrific riots in the UK. While many think it was masterminded by unemployed hood rats, there were more darker, sinister forces at work. After the riots, Sir David Ormond made a very powerful move. He encouraged his former intelligence apparatus, GCHQ, the government communications headquarters, nicknamed the Donut, as well as the building nicknamed Legoland, MI6, to intercept all the social network sites of alleged rioters to accumulate data on those that they would eventually jail, as well as on their BBs on their BlackBerry. But that's not the only intelligence encouraging society to be monitored. When 2 British Muslim converts drove over a British soldier, stabbed him and killed him in broad daylight, and looking to be shot dead by the police to become martyrs for their cause, Dame Stella Remington, the former head of British intelligence MI5, made an interesting statement that was recorded in London's Daily Telegraph. People who suspect their neighbours may be extremists should inform the security services because the enemy is everywhere, the former head of MI5 has said. Dame Stella Remington invoked the wartime spirit as she said the public had a duty to act as the eyes and ears of the security services in combating terrorists. In other words, reintroduce the surveillance policies of the Spanish Inquisition. As small as Britain is, it has 25%, that is 1/4 of the entire planet's closed-circuit television cameras, making Britain the most watched nation on the entire planet, a kind of mini The Truman Show. Following early experiments with face recognition software in Newham, Birmingham, Tameside, Manchester and elsewhere, a shift to digital CCTV, which uses algorithms to do automated searches for stipulated people or behaviors, has been gaining momentum. British airports also use facial recognition by iris scans and other forms of biometrics, keeping a record of who leaves the country.
Airlines can use biometrics to identify the passenger at each step in the passenger journey using their face, their iris, or their fingerprint. That allows airlines and airports to extend self-service at the airport, reducing cost, and at the same time it improves the passenger experience as well.
Not only are cars monitored throughout the country, but when you travel throughout the whole of London using your Oyster card, everywhere you go is on a database so they can have a log of your movements. They are also trying to introduce cards where your Oyster and credit card can become one, preparing for a cashless society, where recently in the British press it said that credit cards will soon be in vain. Drones will also monitor the sky like in the United States. In the UK, Domino Pizza are doing a test trial of delivering their pizzas to customers via drones, destroying human interaction by modern-day technology. Britain is the only place on Earth that has an airport built for flying drones that is situated in Aberforth in Wales, and many are weary that these drones will be eventually used to shoot and kill citizens. For the Ministry of Defence has made the first supersonic UAV drone titled Tyrannus. It can be controlled by anywhere in the world via satellite communications. It is virtually undetectable and it has 4 Hellfire missiles, 2 200-pound bombs and laser-guided bombs where it can conduct surveillance, reconnaissance and intelligence operations. Though Britain has turned into a surveillance state, the English author and journalist Mark Curtis, a former research fellow at the Royal Institute of International Affairs, Chatham House, documents in his powerful and well-researched book, Web of Deceit, why most of the British population are ignorant of these things. 4 corporations control 90% of the British press. A handful control the commercial broadcasting organizations. How news is made and what the news is increasingly takes place within a fiercely competitive market. Stories have to attract audiences to sell to advertisers in competition with soap operas and game shows. BBC, ITV and Channel 5 News simply report nothing seriously critical on British foreign policy. The exception is the odd report on Channel 4 News. A leading media analyst, James Curran, notes that the modern mass media in Britain now perform many of the integrative functions of the church in the Middle Ages. The mass media have assumed the role of the church in interpreting and making sense of the world to the mass public, legitimizing the current social system and order. But all roads are leading to Rome, and as this study comes to a close, we will carefully observe how she will deceive the world. This current young generation has a fascination with secret societies, not having a clue who is the most secret of them all. Lord Robert Montagu was the son of the 6th Duke of Manchester. He was a Cambridge-educated British Conservative politician who served as the Vice President of the Committee on Education between 1867 and 1868 under the British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli and under the British monarch Queen Victoria, and he documented that the Roman Church is the largest secret society in the world, beside which Freemasonry is but a pygmy. Many who study European history are familiar with a famous city that could not be besieged by war. So instead of using arrows, swords and battering rams, they offered a token of peace to the city of Troy by sending a wooden horse, the famous Trojan horse. The city welcomed the token of peace, but as they put their guard down, the enemy was in the wooden horse and the whole city was besieged and everyone slaughtered, and there ended the famous city of Troy. Avro Manhattan shows how the papacy is using this tactic to weaken Protestantism. The Catholic Church's offer for reunion to all Christian churches not in communion with her and of harmonious cooperation with egalitarian-minded society of our age is a magnified ecclesiastical Trojan horse, a means to penetrate their citadels and accomplish their capture and final capitulation. The Trojan horse against Protestantism is reunion. Against contemporary world democracy, it is the unnatural Catholic advocacy of the theory and practice of liberty. And the man who has been appointed to bring the churches in line with Rome is a man called Bishop Tony Palmer.
Hello, I'm Tony Palmer. I am the Abbot Bishop of the Order of the Ark Community. Pope Francis and I have covenant together, made covenant to work together for the visible unity of Christians. He asked me and consecrated me to be a bridge for the promotion of Christian unity.
Carefully look at the symbol of Tony Palmer's Ark Community. It is a triquetra, 3 esoteric sixes, and it is one of the most frequent symbols used in the occult, for their rituals and in their literature. It can also be found on the cover of many of the New King James Version Bibles. So Tony Palmer can keep his little false papal agenda to himself. The last time in history the Protestants put their guard down to Rome, it cost them their life. In a new re-released 2014 20th anniversary version of the film called Queen Margaret, it records the brutal St. Bartholomew's Massacre, where on August 22nd, 1572, Protestants in France were massacred by a fanatical Catholic mob. Neither age nor gender was spared. This painting shows Catherine Medici looking over the dead bodies of Protestants who were massacred. Historians ignore the fact that it was Diego Lainez, the second black pope or superior general of the Jesuits, who gave the order for the murder. Pope Gregory XIII struck a medal in commemoration glamorizing the murder of these Protestants. This was the Pope who was shown earlier in this study. Pope Francis I, a Jesuit priest, has taken the world by storm, but this is only a part of the papal strategy where he visits the sick in hospital.
He walks the streets, poses for pictures, embraces the sick, and is not afraid to have a bit of fun and engage, it seems, just about everybody. His Twitter account, @Pontifex, ranks in the top 5 most searched words on the internet, where his is also the most talked about name in the year 2013. A former janitor and nightclub bouncer, he's been called the People's Pope, and in just 9 months, he's captured the imagination not just of the world's 1.2 billion Catholics, but the world itself. He's also ushered in a kind of truce in the culture wars. When pressed about gays in the church, he responded, quote, "A gay person who follows God, who am I to judge him?" And both Time magazine and the leading gay magazine, The Advocate, have named him their Person of the Year.
James Aitken Wiley shows us 2 centuries ago in his History of Protestantism that the Jesuit strategy is to come by peace, to deceive. Shrewd, practical, and precise are the instructions of the Jesuits. Should anyone ask on what errand the good fathers have come, they are instructed to make answer that their sole object is the salvation of souls. What a pious errand! Who would not strive to be the first to welcome to their houses and to seat at their tables men whose aims are so unselfish and heavenly? They are to be careful to maintain a humble and submissive deportment. they are to pay frequent visits to the hospitals, the sick chamber, and the prisons. Men will begin to speak of them and say, what a humble, pious, charitable order of men these fathers of the Society of Jesus are. This is exactly how the world is described in the Jesuit Pope, and by the time they wake up, it'll be too late.
You see, even when you go for a very intense topic like the mark of the beast, you can see that the heavens aren't too happy. But that ain't going to deter me. I done the two kingdoms specifically because I was seeing that the message in the churches were being watered down. And I had a choice of choosing John chapter 12 and verse 43, which says, for they love the praise of men more than the praise of God. Or Acts chapter 5 and verse 29, ought to obey God rather than men. I'd rather be obedient to God than man. We really have to make a stand in these end times. Because as much as we say we're going to stand for Christ, when they pass that decree where no man might buy or sell, that is when you're going to see what your real Christianity is all about. We can all talk how we're going to stand for Jesus, but the very fabric and the fibers of what you believe is going to be put to the test. And everything we go through now is preparing us for that final time in these end times. I know some of us go through financial problems and some of us may think we're failing God, but God has not given up on any one of us. We're still alive and we still have an opportunity to be saved. So in the mark of the beast, the image of the beast and the number of his name, let us pray earnestly that we can stand. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, it's going to be tough. You're going to start seeing friends betray each other. You know, Jesus tells us in Luke chapter 21 and verse 16, and ye shall be betrayed by friends and parents and brethren and kinsfolk, and some of them shall cause you to be put to death. But we have to get to a stage in our Christian walk where we are totally dependent upon God. I know it's not easy, but we have to get to that stage where we say, God, I give you everything. So I'm going to close off, and I pray that this study, I know a lot of the information was quite heavy, but as I always encourage you, everything you see in these documentaries, go and research it. Don't take anything I say for face value. Go and research, analyze, investigate. I know a lot of the information provokes people, but that's its aim, to provoke. So I pray that this study is a blessing as we continue in the two kingdoms.
And that servant that don't obey his Lord shall be beaten with many stripes. That's scripture.